off in the last video. We pretty much left the Russian Altai and were headed for Mongolia. Now, because of Rod's problems with his motorcycle, in that Rod had to go back to the UK to get some parts, we ended up being about a week late entering Mongolia, and we had a reasonably strict schedule. I know Baz and Linda had to get back to Holland on a certain day. They had flights back to Holland, and I had to get to Irkutsk in Siberia through Mongolia, because there's only a limited number of border crossings you can access in Mongolia. So I had to get to Irkutsk. Baz and Linda had to get to Ulaanbaatar, and it was going to be a rush once we actually got to Mongolia itself. Unfortunately, it began with rain. It was raining when we entered Mongolia, and we were not really able to do too much in the time we had. And I have to apologize, because the video that we're going to be able to put together for Mongolia is pretty limited. The amount of filming we could do is very limited, so I'm just whipping together a bunch of GoPro stuff. I'll stitch that together with a few photos from the other guys, and we'll see where it gets us. We entered Mongolia and it was rainy. There wasn't a lot we could do on the first day. We had a nice little ride to the town of Tsengel, where we spent the night camping in the rain by the river, and early the next morning we filled up with fuel, also in the rain, before heading to basically spending the day, well, the morning, riding in rain to Olgi, where we kind of found a place to stay for the night. But I didn't end up staying for the night. I after about an hour or so in Olgi, I told the other guys that I'm going to leave them at this point. I had to get to Irkutsk, so I wished them well, and basically 3 of the 4 guys, Baz, Linda and Rod, I wouldn't see again. They were leaving the trip in Ulaanbaatar or Irkutsk. So I'd see Terry again, and but apart from that, I just kind of had to wish the guys well and take off and try to get to Irkutsk on time. When I left Olgi, it was after 5 p.m. in the afternoon. I would only have daylight until around 8:30, but I needed to try and get to Ulaanbaatar, around 300 kilometers away over Mongolian pistes. The first 50 kilometers of the route went through a flooded river valley, and I would have to deal with a lot of mud and water on the road. I came across an area which looked like half a mountainside had been washed down towards the river in a giant mudslide. I picked my way across the rock field and tried to find a way out. Eventually I came across some compacted earth which looks like a few trucks had been through before me. On the other side of the mudslide, I met a Mongolian trucker who was hesitating to go in.
This was a signpost in the middle of nowhere that I'd come across before and left my Sibirsky Extreme sticker on there. The ground soon became drier, and I pushed on and made Ulaanbaatar soon after dark. The next day the sun was out and I started early to put the miles on. Meanwhile, the other guys in the team had decided to abandon the first couple of days of the planned cross-country route and were taking the more major southern route across Mongolia towards Altai City. After Altai City, they were able to turn northeast and head along the piste I had drawn for them. But not before taking the chance to interact with a whole bunch of Mongolian families along the way. Their trail went through a river valley with a lot of river crossings, but the scenery was sensational. Meanwhile, up in the north, I found some great single track through the hills. I was happy with how things were going. I was making good progress and looked like I would make it to Irkutsk in time. Meanwhile, down south, the guys still had plenty of river crossings to deal with. Midway through the second day, after a water crossing in which my front wheel became immersed under the water and stuck for 5 minutes in a raging torrent, my wheel bearings perished, my front wheel bearings. So I had to try and get them out, and I couldn't get them out with the tools I had and ended up having to give up after about 7 or 8 hours and find the nearest yurt or ger and enlist the help of locals. I stayed the night with the local family in their ger and left early in the morning after a cup of tea from the lady of the house. My track soon rejoined the main northern trail. There was a fair bit of traffic on the northern route, and after the delays of yesterday where I lost 7 riding hours to the wheel bearing issue, I was keen to make up a lot of time today and ride to Erdenet, which would make it about an 800 kilometers a day. Unfortunately for me, yet another year in Mongolia was rushed and I didn't really get to explore it as much as I would have liked. The good news is after all of that, and after the 7 hours of lost riding time due to the wheel bearing issue, I'd still managed to cross Mongolia and make it to Irkutsk in 4 riding days. Baz and Linda were leaving the ride in Ulaanbaatar. Rod would ride up to Irkutsk and then home across the Trans-Siberian Highway from there. So this signified the end of the second stage of the Sibirsky Extreme Trail.